from the coast as they can is like there isn't a timetable. There's an event timetable, but the president has been trying to announce it since last September. So first they tried with the emergency broadcast system. That didn't work. And then, believe it or not, I mean, you know, you think if you're president, you can just announce whatever the hell you want. And no, you can't, because there are people, the elite and the rich and the powerful, don't want you to stop going to your job. I mean, if they announced the whole truth, do you think anyone would show up for their job? Now, I live on a mountaintop in the middle of the Maine coast because Maine was held down by glaciers. And it's slowly rising, so once the crust comes free of the core, it's just going to pop up another 500 feet. So I'll be doing fine with a 600-foot tidal wave. But Florida, that's actually going to sink. The UK, that's going to sink. Japan is going to sink. So a lot of places, it isn't just a matter of a 600-foot tidal wave. And then, of course, all the ice in the whole world is in the wrong place, so that's going to melt. So the Zetas say the final sea level is going to be 700 feet above present. So the president isn't going to say what's going to happen. He's going to say there's a planet in between the Earth and the Sun, but you know, that he would turn it over to NASA, which would say, yes, there's a rogue planet, but we were prohibited by national security, but don't worry about it. Go back to sleep. If anything's going to happen, we'll tell you. And then maybe they turn it over to NOAA, which is saying, well, this huge Earth wobble is what's causing all this weather. They're never going to admit that global warming and climate change were a lie, because can you imagine the lawsuits? It would bring the whole world to a halt, because how many hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on reducing fossil fuels? And, you know, the thing is Planet X is roiling the magma, so the magma's circulating closer to the bottom of the crust, so the seafloors are warming, and the ice is melting from underneath. But the actual truth is the Arctic just had one of the coldest winters in years, and the amount of ice that formed this winter in the Arctic is unbelievable. Antarctica has been gaining ice. The top of the Himalayas and a lot of these glaciers are gaining ice. So this whole global warming thing, they're never going to use that phrase again. They would rather die than say global warming. So you know, I don't know how he's going to put it, but my opinion is he's got to announce it. And meanwhile, the government is doing all these strange things, like ordering 1.2 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition. They're going to arm these Social Security employees, and the National Weather Service employees are all going to be packing with hollow point bullets. I mean, come on, who thinks you know, that's normal? What are they expecting? And, you know, of course there's going to be some people who are going to riot and steal and loot, be out of control. But yet, if they do announce it, then people will go, well, this is something that we're all facing together. Let's work together to save as many people as possible. But they've got to do it sooner than later. Now, I live on a mountaintop. I heat with wood. I've got an outhouse. I'm ready for no electricity and no fuel. You know, I live in a forest. I've got wood all around me. So, you know, my theory is if you're ready for pole shift today, then you're going to be ready for it whenever else you can. But if you notice, around the world, the economy has not been getting better, regardless of what they're saying. And people are realizing every day that everything they've worked for all their lives is coming to naught. And hopefully people will say, well, really, what is important? And they'll realize, you know, every time you see a disaster, you see people say, well, I lost everything, but, you know, at least we all survived. And, you know, that's what's important. And people are going to start realizing, well, maybe people are more important than possessions. See, that's the thing. There isn't a timetable, and that's the number one question everyone asks. Well, when is this going to happen? But the thing is it could happen at any time. The only country that's taken any provision is China, which has built these ghost cities because, remember I had said that the southeastern China plate was going to be sinking. Well, Jakarta, Indonesia, parts of it are 85 feet below sea level. That sinking is almost 70% complete in that tip of the Southeast Asian plate. But all the other earth changes have stopped. And I was talking to Nancy on the phone. I said, you know, that I heard that these metal boxes were found on the beaches in Oregon and they were vibrating. And I said, I think there's extraterrestrial devices, but it is true. On all the faults of the Earth, there are tens of thousands of these boxes vibrating, and what they're doing is, instead of letting the movement of the plates, because the roiling of the magma deep in the core of the Earth is causing these quakes and these other shifts, the north end of South America is going to move to the west, the north end of Africa is going to move to the east, the Atlantic is going to get wider, the Pacific is going to get narrower. So there's all these things. And so anyway, these metal boxes have put that off, and the reason why is because they want to have the massive social change. And you can imagine if the president does announce it, of course there's going to be massive social change. So Planet X is not going anywhere. It's sitting there. And the clump of four planets, the dark twin, Venus, the Earth, and Planet X, are still rotating around the sun, but they're not moving in relation to each other. And the tail is stretched towards the Earth, so that rock that came down over Russia and the other ones that were seen over San Francisco and Cuba and Japan are all from the tail of planet rocks, and there's trillions of them. So this is going to be a big disaster. So when the president announces it, and I mean, I'm not sitting in his office privy to whatever they're deciding, but I can tell you this. They really don't want people to he's not going to use the word Planet X. He's going to say, look, Reagan signed an executive order making it top secret. Every president signed on, but I'm such a humanitarian that I'm telling you that there has been a planet between the Earth and the Sun for 9 years, and why not? I mean, if it separates from the Sun where every single person on Earth looks up and goes, oh my God, what's that? And the glowing area, the thing that's at the 5 o'clock position, is the tail, which is sort of transparent, translucent, whatever you want to say, because it's a cloud of dust or red iron oxide dust. It's lit by the sun, and you can see that from Earth. So that's what people are taking pictures of, is the tail of Planet X stretching towards the Earth. And you can't see Planet X itself, but one of these days, when it gets far enough from the sun, you are going to see it. That the Council of Worlds has told the president, you've got to announce it. So you can speculate that the first thing he would say is Ronald Reagan had an executive order that this is top secret, and every other president signed on, but now I'm going to be the one who's breaking that because everybody has to know that. How can he not announce it? Because Planet X pulls the magnetic bar of the Great Atlantic Rift down towards it, and then as the Earth continues to shift and the Atlantic no longer faces the sun, then the North Pole, which doesn't like the North Pole of Planet X, pushes the North Pole of the Earth back. So you get these wobbles, and what you get is this gigantic loops in the jet stream. So normally the jet stream moves from west to east, but now if you notice these weather maps, and why wouldn't you with all these big storms? So everybody's more interested in the weather than ever because it's really can be life or death. And what you get is these giant arcs of cold air coming down from the Arctic, and 30 miles to the east, you've got this giant arc of tropical air coming up from the Caribbean, and you've got this clash or fronts that makes these gigantic storms. I mean, look at Hurricane Sandy. And, if the government told the truth, they should say nobody should rebuild anywhere. But it's just like Katrina in New Orleans. People are saying, well, we're going to bring it back, and it's going to be so meaningful, and we're going to have Seaside Heights, New Jersey, ready for the tourist season. And, but the truth is nobody should be there now at all because this is right in the danger zone. They should be saying, well, we're going to move anyone that wants to go from the coast. And that's the interesting thing. The Zetas have said even when this is announced, probably only as much as 60%, but no more than that, are going to go, oh, my God, we've got to go to safety. And the rest are going to go, well, I really don't want to change anything, so I'm going to keep going to work. And if a tidal wave washes over me, then that's it. I'll just die. Well, okay, that's what this like.
World ends 25th of February. Nibiru earthquake apocalypse wipes out civilization, theorists warn. Conspiracy theorists are once again busy online stirring the pot of mass hysteria with warnings that the world will end in 25 February, when the mysterious, mythical planet Nibiru approaches Earth close enough to allow its gravitation field to trigger cataclysmic earthquakes across the globe. Planet Nibiru, which some believe to be the home of a mythical alien race called the Anunnaki, is supposedly a massive planet lurking in the fringes of our solar system. The mysterious planet orbits the Sun once every 3,600 years, according to Nibiru theorists. The gravitational field of the massive planet disrupts the orbital paths of planets in our solar system, when its wide orbit brings it close to the inner solar system once every 3,600 years. The planet caused significant disruption in our solar system the last time its orbit brought it close, but the truth about the incident has been deliberately obscured by historians and astronomers, according to conspiracy theorists. However, the last incident that occurred thousands of years ago was minor, according to conspiracy theorists. This time around, Nibiru will pass even closer to our inner solar system with catastrophic consequences for the Earth, biological life, and human civilization. Planet Nibiru-Apocalypse believers had previously proclaimed that Nibiru or Planet X would collide with Earth in 25 February, and wipe out human civilization, according to the Daily Mail. NASA, however, refuted the claim at the time. When the prophecy failed to come true, Nibiru-Apocalypse conspiracy theorists, including David Meade, who had claimed that certain secret inscriptions on the pyramids of Giza indicate that Nibiru would hit Earth in 25 February, revised their doomsday prophecy and came up with a new prediction that Nibiru would devastate the Earth. However, this time, the rogue planet will not collide directly with Earth, it would only enter our inner solar system and pass close enough to Earth for its gravitational field to trigger mega-earthquakes and other freak weather patterns across the globe, doomsday theorists said, according to Express. The predicted backside alignment quake event is scheduled for 25th of February, when the Earth passes behind the Sun relative to the Black Star. Besides the disruptive influence of the mythical planet's gravitational field, the planet, according to conspiracy theorists, is sending out plasmic energy particles that will disrupt the Earth's core flows and trigger major changes in the Earth's climate. The changes would wipe out civilization and life on Earth, according to doomsday theorists. Recent increase in the incidences of natural disasters, such as volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, hurricanes, and storms, are due to the influence of the mythical planet Nibiru, according to conspiracy theorists. The predictions by Nibiru/Planet X doomsday mongers, such as Christian DeBlanc, David Meade, and Terrell Croft, on the website Planet News, had drawn so much public attention that NASA was forced to issue yet another statement denying it. According to NASA, Nibiru and other stories about wayward planets are an internet hoax. NASA added that Nibiru obviously does not exist. When asked about the coming apocalypse, Dr. David Morrison, a spokesperson for NASA at the NASA Ames Research Center, insisted that Nibiru does not exist, and thus the question of an apocalypse caused by the planet does not arise, The Washington Post reported. He argued that if Nibiru were close enough to Earth to cause a series of devastating earthquakes around the globe on Sunday, astronomers and scientists would already be aware of its presence. Scientists would have detected the effect of its gravitation field on other planets in our solar system, and it would have disrupted the Moon's orbit of the Earth. However, Nibiru-Apocalypse believers insist that NASA and the government are under the control of a clandestine group of the global elite known as the Illuminati, who are determined to hide the truth from the masses, while preparing to survive the coming disaster.
It's been almost 10 years since little Pluto was demoted from being a planet, but today scientists from the California Institute of Technology have announced that they finally have solid evidence for a Planet X, a true ninth planet on the edge of our solar system.
It is believed to be far beyond the orbit of Pluto, roughly the size of Neptune, with a mass 10 times that of Earth.
There are things out there, little icy objects that are orbiting in a funny way, and nobody was quite sure why. It seemed like there might be something with gravity pulling on them, but nobody quite understood. And finally, these scientists that you talked about took a really hard look at it, did simulations, calculations, and they came up with the explanation. It probably is this giant planet.
I think I read somewhere it orbits the sun every 10,000 to 20,000 years.
Right.
Is that why no one has seen it to this point?
No, that's not why. It's because it's so dim. It's so far away that even though it's big, it's very, very dim and it'd be very tough to spot with a telescope.
I'm also fascinated at the idea that this planet could be so far out there and still our sun be the mass that is keeping it in the gravitational pull of our solar system.
Right, yeah, but no, it's true.
That's incredible. And so there was a thought at one point from scientists that when they thought that there was something beyond Pluto, that it might have been all the massive objects floating in the Kuiper Belt, but it's not.
Right. So all those objects are out there and they have a lot of mass. And originally the scientists said, look, a planet is such a crazy idea. Maybe it's the Kuiper Belt itself that's pulling it on itself and making these orbits look funny.
And when we talk about the mass of this planet X, this ninth planet, being 10 times that of Earth, for those who are not scientists, what does that really mean, the mass of a planet versus Earth's mass?
Well, if you could put it on a scale, how much it would weigh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. And so it's bigger, it's bulkier, it's got more heft, it's got more gravity. It's this huge elephant in the living room, except we didn't know it was there.
You mentioned that scientists haven't seen it yet because of how far away it is and how dim it is. Is there a way for them to get visual evidence?
Yes. So the biggest telescopes in the world can theoretically see this thing if they're looking in exactly the right place. And with the publication of this new paper today, they are now going to start to look in earnest.
How much further out there is this planet X than the rest of the planets in the solar system? I mean,
so Pluto we think of as the really out at the very edge, the very farthest thing that you could call a planet, even though we don't anymore. And
I'm still supporting Pluto's right to be a planet.
But this thing is 5 times further out than Pluto.
Fascinating. Is there any chance it's not a planet?
No, there's always. It's very foolish to say no chance because you just don't know what you don't know. But the odds are looking very, very good.
60 billion miles from the sun.
Yep.
Amazing stuff. Michael Lemonick, thank you so much. Fascinating stuff.
Great, thanks.
Suggesting the Earth may be on the verge of another mass extinction, similar to the one that killed the dinosaurs. It happened 5 times in the past 540 million years, but this time around, experts say we may be able to stop it. Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City University of New York and author of the new book, Physics of the Future, that we're going to be looking forward to the new book, of course. All right, Dr. Kaku, getting right to it. So which species would be most at risk?
Well, so far, if you analyze the last few hundred years of life on the Earth, human activity apparently has wiped out 1.4% of all plant and animal species, and it is 100 to 1,000 times faster than normal because of human population, development, pollution, overharvesting. And if you take a look at a zoo, many of the zoo animals that our children love, we may find them going extinct. The tiger, for example, may go extinct. Many of the familiar zoo animals, bears, and realize that 18,000 species are at risk.
And what about climate control? What role does it play?
Yeah, climate change is also involved in this thing. Independent of where climate change comes from, we see that the seasons are changing. Summers are getting longer, winters are getting shorter on average. And we always say that the early bird catches the worm, but that assumes that the worm and the bird are synchronized. Many of these cycles, the natural cycles, are being thrown into disarray, meaning, for example, droughts in China going on right now, perhaps famine in certain areas. So we humans cannot be divorced from what's happening in the natural world.
We can't be divorced. Is there something we can do about it? I guess you said pollution is one thing we can do. But so what happens, Doctor, if there is not this sort of scientific pruning? Would the Earth be overrun with all sorts of creatures?
Well, evolution says survival of the fittest, and so far we humans are among the fittest. But we are also at the top of the food chain, the top of the pyramid, and it wouldn't take much to dislodge us from being at the top of the food chain.
So who could outrank us at that top of that food chain? You know what animals I need to look out for?
Well, in science fiction, of course, the insects take over. But look at something very simple. We are dependent on just a few crops, wheat, rice, and just a few crops. And if a blight were to wipe out these crops, then a huge chunk of humanity would starve to death because we're so dependent on just a few plants and animals for our existence.
So should we expand our menu, so to speak, or is there something else that the Earth provides that we should be looking at?
We should be wary of overharvesting. For example, overharvesting the oceans. We have drag nets, which in principle could drag the entire oceans. That's how efficient our technology is. Also, wheat production we have to worry about because water is the key to wheat production, and there are going to be perhaps water wars in the future.
And are you concerned about that water wars and that we may run out of water?
Well, there'll always be water on the Earth. The question is the cost and what it would take to extract it, to desalinate it, to divert it, to irrigate. And so the cost of certain kinds of commodities could start to rise. So just because we're at the top of the food chain doesn't mean that we're invulnerable to what's happening outside where biodiversity is being threatened.
You mentioned, we have to go, but you mentioned insects could overrun the Earth.
Well, that's in science fiction.
Yeah, but the cockroaches, they never seem to go away, Doctor. We got to figure out a way to get rid of them. All right, Dr. Michio Kaku, thank you so much. And your new book we're looking out for is Physics of the Future.
Of November 2016. There are increasing indications that Planet X, also known as Nibiru, is moving in a precise direction towards planet Earth. So what does this suggest for those of us who dwell on this planet? Is there actually a biblical link that correlates with the end times as we know it? Many of you believe that NASA and other government bodies, such as the Pentagon and the CIA, are aware of its approach. Your belief carries considerable weight, considering the recent publication of scientific studies claiming that there is proof of an unnamed mysterious planet lurking beyond Pluto. The claim was determined by observations of gravitational influences on a group of celestial bodies called the extreme trans-Neptunian objects, which are orbiting our sun beyond Neptune. The approach of the mysterious planet Nibiru is at present sending waves of charged plasmatic energy particles through our solar system. The flow of energy will finally affect the core flows of the Earth and result in catastrophic changes in Earth's climate, which is without a doubt occurring on an escalated scale. Planet Earth has been feeling the effects of this inbound planet or system of planets since 1996, with records showing a troublesome increase in seismic and volcanic activity, extreme weather patterns, and catastrophic disasters. U.S. and Russian governments are aware of its approach, as is the Vatican hierarchy, which is keeping a watchful eye on the heavens with their sophisticated telescope perched high in the mountains of Arizona. In the meantime, the public is being kept in the dark regarding this approaching apocalypse. The consensus by many is that such an event would annihilate 2/3 of the world's population, while 2/3 of those who survive the initial impact will perish over time due to starvation and exposure to the elements. The question that persists with respect to Planet X is whether this mysterious planet that scientists now claim exists beyond Pluto is the same planet that is believed to have wiped out much of humanity thousands of years ago. There is, however, more to the story than what meets the eye. Based on the research study known as extreme trans-Neptunian objects and the quasi mechanism signaling the presence of trans-Plutonian planets, posted in 2014 in the Journal Monthly Notices of the Royal Astronomical Society letters, there are at least 2 planets, part of our solar system, larger than Earth, lurking out there beyond Pluto, and whose existence can be noticed through their gravitational influences. So it is fair to say that NASA understands that these planetary objects are a serious threat to our civilization. It is widely perceived that researchers had proposed that the so-called Planet X was at least 10 times as large as Earth and was most likely situated at a distance of 250 astronomical units from our sun, with an orbit of 10 to 20,000 years. There is an understanding.
It's like you're entitled to be a skeptic, you're entitled to be in denial, and you're entitled to die in it, but there's no reason for you to do that. So the binary star is quite a distance away. That's why it takes 3,657 years for Planet X to return. So it's something we've never seen because it's burned out, but it is a huge body, and that's where it started. And evidently, Planet X has been coming here at least 2 billion years. So, it wasn't that the Anunnaki were always there. They reached a point where they decided they wanted to powder the gold and put it in their atmosphere to keep the planet a little bit warmer. It's got giant hot magma in its core, and it's got water, which has the highest specific heat of any substance in the universe, so it holds heat. It takes longer to heat water than anything in the universe, and water holds heat longer than any. So, but they were getting cold, so that's where the whole quest for gold came from. That Phobos is a spaceship because it's hollowed out and it's got chambers in it because they use ground-penetrating radar. But actually, Phobos is one giant gold nugget, and the Anunnaki, since they came back, have been mining. Go do a search in Wyoming. Dick Cheney tried to get the Wyoming legislature, and he only failed by a few votes, to buy a used aircraft carrier. Now, would Wyoming, Edgar Cayce said that Omaha was going to be the greatest seaport in North America after pole shift, and evidently he's planning that the Mississippi will split wider, saltwater will go up to the Great Lakes, and then up the Missouri and the Platte Rivers, and then maybe the Red River. And I guess they were planning to, keep it, in the Great Lakes or in the Gulf, and then float it right up to Wyoming. But you can see why he would want that. It's got nuclear power. It's got a hospital. It holds 5,000 people, and he could load it with fighter strike jets, and be king of the world. And you look at the billionaires around the Earth, they're trying to start their own space programs. So nobody's going to leave Earth and come back as kings of the Earth afterwards. No, they're all going to have to go through it. And whether you're a billionaire or not, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves. So, you've heard of the idea of these deep underground bunkers everybody was going to head. But, how well are they going to survive in 10-plus power earthquakes? So they're not. But then, after pole shift, at the hour of pole shift, when the tidal waves start, then everyone's going to, after that, there won't be any earthquakes, so people are going to want to be underground, because how are you going to survive? People are going to want to be underground, because how are you going to survive?
There are increasing indications that Planet X, also known as Nibiru, is moving in a precise direction towards planet Earth. So what does this suggest for those of us who dwell on this planet? Is there actually a biblical link that correlates with the end times as we know it? Many of you believe that NASA and other government bodies, such as the Pentagon and the CIA, are aware of its approach. Your belief carries considerable weight, considering the recent publication of scientific studies claiming that there is proof of an unnamed mysterious planet lurking beyond Pluto. The claim was determined by observations of gravitational influences on a group of celestial bodies called the extreme trans-Neptunian objects, which are orbiting our Sun beyond Neptune. The approach of the mysterious planet Nibiru is at present sending waves of charged plasmatic energy particles through our solar system. The flow of energy will finally affect the core flows of the Earth and result in catastrophic changes in Earth's climate, which is without a doubt occurring on an escalated scale. Planet Earth has been feeling the effects of this inbound planet or system of planets since 1996, with records showing a troublesome increase in seismic and volcanic activity, extreme weather patterns, and catastrophic disasters. U.S. and Russian governments are aware of its approach, as is the Vatican hierarchy, which is keeping a watchful eye on the heavens with their sophisticated telescope perched high in the mountains of Arizona. In the meantime, the public is being kept in the dark regarding this approaching apocalypse. The consensus by many is that such an event would annihilate 2/3 of the world's population, while 2/3 of those who survive the initial impact will perish over time due to starvation and exposure to the elements. The question that persists with respect to Planet X is whether this mysterious planet that scientists now claim exists beyond Pluto is the same planet that is believed to have wiped out much of humanity thousands of years ago. There is, however, more to this story than what meets the eye. Based on the research study known as extreme trans-Neptunian objects and the Kazai mechanism, signaling the presence of trans-Plutonian planets, posted in 2014 in the Journal Monthly Notices of the Royal Astronomical Society letters, there are at least 2 planets, part of our solar system, larger than Earth, lurking out there beyond Pluto, and whose existence can be noticed through their gravitational influences. So it is fair to say that NASA understands that these planetary objects are a serious threat to our civilization. It is widely perceived that researchers had proposed that the so-called Planet X was at least 10 times as large as Earth and was most likely situated at a distance of 250 astronomical units from our Sun, with an orbit of 10 to 20,000 years. There is an understanding that an approaching large body or a star system of planets and moons can trigger considerable differences in magnetic activity, and recent data from our magnetosphere indicates that this is what is now taking place. There were even suggestions that Google Sky had revealed an area in space that had been censored by NASA, showing the winged globe moving through our solar system. So are these subtle warnings an earnest attempt to inform us that an apocalyptic situation is at hand, which is coming from out of this world, something previously unknown to humanity, but which have memories in our subconscious from past lives and records kept over the ages? If we consider the ancient era of Atlantis and Lemuria and what happened to these civilizations, is it any wonder that NASA would redact